are there any players at the Combine this week that you think that Eagles fans should have their eyes on?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about certain positions, okay? Like offensive line, Lane Johnson's 35, going to be 35. Great player, still has a year or two left, I think. But how do you replace him? Are they going to kick Mekhi Becton over if they re-sign him? I don't know. But ultimately, you got to look at replenishing offensive linemen. So the Eagles are picking 32nd in the first round. Two guys I like, one of them is Aireontae Ersery, a tackle from Minnesota, who I think Stoutland would love. I think he's a big piece of clay. He's 330 pounds. He's a big, thick-ass guy that kind of like Stout likes in his line. I think he's a little bit of a developmental guy, so Stout would have a chance to get more out of him. There's a guy named Armand Membu from Mizzou, who I like also, who can play guard or tackle. And I think Ersery could probably kick inside the guard. So I think there's some positional versatility. I think there's a chance that one of them could be available at 32. And I think, for me, I think they're really intriguing guys to keep an eye on if you're an Eagle fan. The tight end wideout thing is also interesting.
Well, you said, isn't this the deepest tight end class you've seen in a while? Yeah.
And I think there's a couple tight ends out there that I'm kind of intrigued by. Everybody knows about, the Tyler Warren kid from Penn State and the Michigan kid, Colston Loveland. So they're picking 32. I don't think they're picking a tight end at 32, but who's a tight end that can make a difference in the second round, late first round, second round, third round? There are two kids. I mean, there's a kid from Bowling Green. His name's Harold Fannin, 6'3", 238. This kid caught 117 passes this year at Bowling Green, which is ridiculous. And everybody's going, yeah, Bowling Green. So what? Well, they opened up against Penn State, and he caught 11 catches for over 100 yards. Then they played Texas A&M. He had 8 catches for almost $150. I mean, so that's 19 catches against 2 high-level Division I programs. This kid's legit. Then he went to the Senior Bowl and looked really athletic. He blocks well enough. He's more of a perimeter kind of blocker. I'm intrigued by him a little bit. And then there's a guy named Elijah Arroyo from Miami. Had a bunch of injuries early in his career, but he's a little bigger, like 6'4", 255. He caught 35 passes, but averaged 17 yards a catch. And I think the athletic competition between these two kids, one of these two kids is going to pop early in the second round, I think. So they had a really good season. They went to the Senior Bowl, played really well, opened some eyes. Now the next step for them is, what do they do at the Combine? How well do they run? How fluid are they in the catching drills? What do their hands look like? So I'm looking forward to comparing those two kids, and how he might have some ammunition to move up in the second round. He might not have to move up. Maybe one of them is there. So I'm really intrigued by those two guys.
Okay.
As far as, and that's kind of the offensive side of the ball. And I didn't mention the wideouts. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, really solid. Really, I think he fit really well in their pass offense because he knows what he's doing. He's a precise route runner. He's smart as can be. Luther Bolden from Missouri is maybe a little more athletic, a little more explosive. Both those guys might be available at 32.
You're in first round of 32? First round? Okay.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Okay.
I think the defensive side is kind of interesting, a little more, because, who are they going to sign and not sign in free agency? Can they afford to sign both Milt Williams and Josh Sweat? And if they can't, which one are they going to try hard to get done and let one walk to see what his value is in free agency? I'm kind of on the Milt Williams boat, which I think you probably figured out from our last podcast. He's going to be 26 in April. He's healthy. I think he's one of the most dominant, growing into being one of the more dominant young defensive tackles, and I think he still has more upside.
Okay.
I hate to see them lose him. If they did, what does the draft look like, right? So a guy from Oregon, Derek Harmon, is a guy to look out for at 32 in the first round. Explosive, quick, kind of has similar traits to Milt. In the second, third rounds, Josh Farmer from Florida State opened my eyes at the Senior Bowl. Really big ass, quick, explosive. I think he's interesting. There's a kid named Darius Alexander from Toledo, might be there in the third round. Again,
what is he?
They're all defensive tackles.
Okay.
I'm saying if you lost Milt Williams, these are three guys that might be interesting on the first and second day.
Got you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So all three of those guys are intriguing to me. And the latter two, Farmer and Alexander, popped at the Senior Bowl. And then if you look at Josh Sweat, okay, what happens if you let Josh Sweat go?
Right.
Now, Josh is going to be 28 later in March. So he's almost 20, so he's a couple of years older. Medically, I hope he's okay. There were some questions about knees coming out of college, but he's answered the bell, obviously. Mm-hmm. If they let him go in free agency and at the end of the first round, would James Pierce from Tennessee be there? Wow. What he'd be exciting to pair with Nolan Smith. I don't think he'd be there. He might be, but I don't think he'd be there. There's a kid from Georgia named Michael Williams.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike Green from Marshall. Those three, one of them could fall to 32. Okay. Don't know. It's still too early. But they're three intriguing guys to watch to see how they perform at the Combine. I think the corner thing is interesting to me, Lee, because Darius Slay is 34. He's got an option bonus of $16 million due before the start of the regular season, and then he gets a salary. So he's worried. He's going to cost the Eagles about $18 million unless they either restructure or cut him. Okay, that's a big bonus due at the regular, and he's 34. Regardless of whether or not he's with them next year, and I think they'll find a way to make it work. Mm-hmm. You still got to be looking at corners. You got to replenish that. Even though they did great with Quinyon Mitchell and the nickel with Cooper DeJean, who's going to play outside 2 years from now? Mm-hmm. And I think there's some intriguing guys. There's a guy that I really love named Azareye'h Thomas from Florida State, and I don't think people think as highly of him as I do. I'm intrigued to watch him at the Combine. I want to see what he runs. But at 32, mm-hmm. I think he'll be there. And I'm intrigued by this kid, so I'd like to see how he runs. There's a safety from Georgia named Malachi Starks, who's explosive, man. He's really interesting. He can play nickel or safety.
And the Eagles do love the Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, that's just kind of – it's too early to tell because you don't know what's going to happen with free agency.
No, but it's good to know so Eagles fans and whoever else can keep an eye on these people while they watch the Combine coverage. I think that's fun.
Yep. Yeah. So that's kind of a quick overview of some positions they might be looking at and some guys that might be there in the first couple days.